Now on 4 Cutting Edge concludes this series with the sinister story of a missing person in Looking for Ricky.
A missing persons ad tucked away on the letters page of the Mirror. A face from 14 years ago. Ricky Dakota. Unmistakably a child of the 80s. Last seen in Tenerife in 1987. Vanished into thin air, 23 years old. So who cared? He wasn't rich, he wasn't famous. A very ordinary disappearance of an ordinary person. After 14 years, who knew what had happened to Ricky?
Somebody said that he'd been seen in a smart white suit. He looked very good and he was very, very cute, you know. But I don't think I believe that myself.
I heard a story along the lines of someone had seen him walking around with no shoes on in the rain, saying that he was Jesus or something.
Nobody saw him, nobody saw where he went or anything. He completely disappeared off the face of the earth.
But Ricky Dakota was somebody's son, somebody's brother.
It's just the not knowing all the time, you know, whether he is still alive or if he had died. At least you'd have time to grieve over it and you get over it. It's just the not knowing whether he is in need of help and whether he does want us to find him and help him and bring him home.
Hi there. Unprecedented activity in the foreign exchanges.
1987 was the high point of yuppiedom. Greed had never been so good.
Exchange was at levels not seen for a long time.
It was all the 80s and everything was huge and big and money and, you know, it really was that big thing. What's your car? What's your this? What's your that? Have you got that? Have you got this? It's all about what you've got, not about who you are.
And I can still remember at 21, when the property boom kicked in, it was like, got to get on that ladder and Ian, you've got to get yourself a job. You're going to miss it, you're going to miss it. It's like, hang on, I'm 21. What do I want a mortgage for?
This was truly a time of excess. And long before Ibiza, there was Tenerife. Back then it was Party Island, unlimited sex, booze and sunshine.
Let me take you to the place where never sits a smiling face, but shoulders with the stars, where strangers take you by the hand and welcome you to Wonderland, beneath the and Mars. Such lovely kind of drinks are free, fun and sunshine, there enough for everyone. Whoa, that's just
For Ricky Dakota and friends like Claire, this was about as good as it could get.
I got to Tenerife on a holiday and just thought, I want to be here. No, there's no rules. You can do whatever you want. You can be whoever you want to be. You can reinvent yourself. You've had a lifestyle that you couldn't maintain in London at all. And it was hot. It was a fantasy world. It wasn't real. It was just an imaginary world where nothing's bad and everything's good and everyone's always happy.
But something bad did happen here. Ricky Dakota, a happy-go-lucky boy of just 23, vanished from the face of the earth. This was where Ricky came from, south of the river, but not the lace-curtain world of suburbia. The family home was here, a flat on a council estate. The Dakota boy was blessed with good looks and charm. For 14 years, his sister Karen has kept alive the sense of who Ricky was.
How old is he in these photos?
How old is he, Mum?
Probably about 16 in those. These last ones.
work. School reports are here. These last two are here. Ricky has always been a willing and cooperative member of the year. He has contributed widely in sport and he'll do well in the future for his chosen career. We were very close, so I always looked up to Ricky. He was like a father figure for me as well because my dad wasn't around. Well, we were both really sporting. He used to run the football things over at the park, and so he used to be a play leader over there, and I used to go over a lot. Yeah, and when his friends came round to the house, I was always part of it. He didn't push me out and say, go on, I've got my mates here. You know, he used to let us sit there and chat and watch videos, and no, he was a good brother.
What I can say is he's a very, very confident guy, very full of himself. He knew what he wanted, really.
Ladies' man?
Definitely a ladies' man. The ladies absolutely loved him. Very successful, so to speak, when we was a teenager.
Hey everybody, take a look at me. I've got street credibility. I may not have a job, but I have a good time with the boys that I meet down on the line.
He told me that he bought a 1000cc Kawasaki, and he said he spent his time on the motorways burning off Porsche 911s. Whether or not he had a bit of a, I wouldn't say a death wish or anything, perhaps he'd change a bit and have more of a thrill-seeker aspect to him.
Lads his age dreamt of making millions in the city, but Ricky's big ambition was to manage the local sports centre. He ended up the caretaker.
When he told me he was a caretaker, that astounded me actually. It wasn't, I think it was a job where he felt he didn't have to answer to anyone. I actually, in thinking about it, he was the sort of guy he didn't like to be given orders. He would want to be steering his own ship.
In the spring of '87, Ricky took off for Tenerife. Caretaking in Catford versus round-the-clock sun and sex on a beach. Somehow, Ricky never caught the plane home.
Hello all. Settled into reasonably priced accommodation eventually. £10 a night. It's really hot here and packed considering it's only April, therefore finding it hard to get work. Loads of people after work. Food and booze is cheap. Tan coming along slowly but surely. So's the money. Going, that is. Bye, Ricky.
6 months later, he had vanished without trace. Ricky's sister Karen has spent 14 years looking in vain. Would there be any fresh evidence on the island? To Ricky, this was more or less heaven. The sprawling resort of Playa de las Americas. 4 miles of concrete and moth-eaten palm trees. And hundreds of bars, restaurants and clubs run by an army of expat Brits. Low life and high life. And here on the strip they call Veronica's, the very heart of the resort. Stories of organised crime, timeshare scams, protection money, and drugs. First point of call was the Duke, a veteran expat who writes for the local English language news sheet. The Duke was supposed to know everyone and anyone on the strip.
How old are these photos?
14 years.
No.
Do you report many incidents with unclaimed?
Yeah, I mean we report everything because we are a newspaper. So it's yeah. So if the instances are there, we report it. You know? But then again, that's what comes to us. You know, there might be a lot more instances that we don't know about. So it's a funny place.
Ricky's last known address was an apartment block called Las Floritas. 14 years later, it was still there. More surprisingly, so was the same manager, Jeremy Artingstall.
Right, that's Ricky. Yes, I do remember him by sight. Yes, indeed. And that was taken here in Las Floritas, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Do you remember anything about him?
Not at all. All I remember is the face.
But the people tend to come and go. Some of them would stay for months and months and months, and others would only be here for a month and then find somewhere cheaper or get fed up with the island and disappear. And people disappeared. You know, you'd have a group of 4 or 5 in an apartment, 3 of them, and one of them would go, and then it'd be replaced by somebody else.
In his postcards home, Ricky made it all sound wonderful.
Hello all, I'm still in De Las Americas, so ignore the card. Found work for Sergeant Pepper's Disco, selling tickets on the beach and hotel pools for a mountain barbecue party that's held every Friday. Get paid on commission and go to party for nothing. Drinks and food free. I enjoy the job. Meet new people every day. I'm staying on own at the moment, but it's expensive. Sharing from tomorrow. P.S. Been playing lots of squash. Bye, Ricky.
It's the land of sunshine and never-ending holidays, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's great, it's exciting. Basically, you're on holiday 24 hours a day. The bars are open 24 hours a day. And it does, it leads to other things. A lot of them are impressionable. They've never been away from home before. They get easily led by manipulative people who can... I mean, you go down the strip. Basically, I'm talking about the area around Veronica's and that type of area. And they can get themselves into all kinds of trouble.
Who runs that area?
Who runs?
Like Veronica's?
I'm not going to say that when you pointed out at me. Yeah, God. The government, of course, and the bar owners. There is nobody else.
People are friendly enough, but it's obvious there are things they just don't talk about.
Do you understand why people don't say anything in front of camera? Can you understand why people won't say things to me in front of camera?
Right, I mean, it all depends on what questions you're asking them anyway, don't it? I mean, if you're going to ask me some questions and I think, no, I'm going to jeopardise myself, obviously I'm not going to answer you, you know, in any way. So it's yeah, I can understand people not saying anything at all, you know.
Veronica's, the seedy strip at the centre of the resort, is a half-mile stretch of bars, clubs and fast food joints. This was where Ricky came to find work at the club called Sergeant Pepper's. His job was to hustle customers into the club and organise parties. But Sergeant Pepper's was no more. This had been part of the site down some grubby steps just off the seafront. New name, new owners, and no one knew anything about Ricky. In fact, getting anyone to talk, at least when the camera was running, was proving increasingly difficult. But then Mei Ling appeared. Mei Ling is Scouse Chinese. She's been here for 15 years. Her restaurant fronts onto one of the roughest parts of the strip. Mei Ling is fearless, and better still, she's curious.
Yeah. What's this for?
Channel 4. Trying to find a missing person.
Missing person, yeah? Who? A girl, boy?
That guy there.
Oh, English?
Yeah. How long have you been out here?
I've been here about 15 years.
Yeah. How old were you back then? I take you weren't mixing with this crowd back then,
yeah.
were you? You were?
I've been going running since I was 11 years old. Well, 10, but they let me in at 11.
Were you drinking then?
Yeah. I don't drink anymore. I've been there since I was 16. I was bored of it. Sergeant Pepper's. Oh, Sergeant Pepper, do you remember or not? No. No?
Do you remember too many people, too many friends? No, never.
So many people come to the island and then go. The amigo. They might not want me to mention the name, though.
You know where he's staying, huh? You know that?
Alright, so you remember this. Go and see Steve.
Do you remember him, Steve?
I don't remember him actually. A little bit. I remember when a girl came around him before.
That was his sister, I think.
I remember the time and everything, yeah. No joy finding him.
No joy, no.
I'm trying to think of else. If you give me a day.
Yeah?
I can,
Shall I give you a card?
Yeah.
That'd be good.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Sure, no problem.
Mei-Ling knows people who might be able to help. She'll pick us up first thing next morning.
Come on, babe, get up here. I think we're having no gears. Yeah, here we are. Here's Ocean View.
Who lives here?
Steve. He's a guy who rents out apartments to workers. He's been doing it for years, so he should know something. Just park with all the yellows, eh?
Certainly the police don't mess about out here. If you're in trouble, you're away. People do disappear. That's it.
Are the police the only people you need to worry about here?
Sorry?
Are the police the only people that you don't need to worry about here?
Well, it depends what you get up to. Depends what you're into. There is other people you can upset. If you stay away from them, you're alright. But you've got to be that way out inclined to get into trouble anyway.
That guy Bo in that picture, he's supposedly... There's a market here, and he works on the market, Bo. Still here. Yeah.
That?
Yeah.
It's his Bo, isn't it?
Do you know him?
Yeah.
Apparently he was a friend of Ricky's.
Right. Bo's still here.
Still on the market?
No. No, he's bigger than that.
What's he doing now?
Is that running?
Yeah, do you want me to turn it off?
13 years ago, Bo, like Ricky, had been a party organiser, one of the beach bums. Now he looked tanned, fit and very successful. He was managing Lineker's, owned by the footballer's brother, and just about the biggest bar on the island.
What was Ricky like?
Spot on, really good bloke. Just a run-of-the-mill chap, plenty of talk from down London way on, you know. Always good with the girls, great fun with the guys. He's just a good chap, you know. I was working at a club called Sergeant Pepper's at the time, and he came along looking for work, and he got involved with us lads there, and then he not only did he work there, he sort of lived in the same complex as us as well. Craig, yeah.
Looking through a pile of photos, Bo recognises one particular face, Ricky's closest friend, a guy called Craig.
That's the Baron, Craig. That's the chap that Ricky was knocking about with. He was pretty close to Craig actually. Craig's back in Manchester now, I think, and he's been there many years now.
Did they have a good relationship?
Yeah, oh yeah, spot on, yeah. They worked together, you know, trolling up and down the beach, selling all the tickets and chatting all the girls. And then they went out boozing at night and tried to seal the deal.
What does Bo remember about Ricky's disappearance from the scene?
there's always bits of rumours, you know, like I remember one time somebody said that he'd been seen, I mean, I don't want to build any of his hopes up here because this is just Tenerife talk, you know. I mean, this was probably 6 months after he'd been seen in a smart white suit. He looked very good and he was very, very cute, you know. But I don't know if I believe that myself. It's Tenerife. People like to talk, don't they, you know. He just disappeared. He literally just disappeared. Nobody saw him, nobody saw where he went or anything. He completely disappeared off the face of the earth.
To chase these rumours, the next person to track down would be the Baron, Craig Barron, Ricky's best friend, and he was back in England. And there was another strange rumour. Someone who'd said they'd seen Ricky alive and well 2 years after he disappeared. Back in South London, Ricky's sister has only now decided to talk about someone who says they saw Ricky alive and well 2 years after he vanished.
We wasn't really sure at first whether it was actually Ricky that she had seen, so you know, it wasn't until we actually spoke with her and she described Ricky and she knew of the friends that he was hanging out with at the time that we actually did realise it possibly was him.
The witness was called Fiona. She'd rung in response to a missing persons ad. It sounded incredible, but if Fiona was mistaken, she was completely convinced. She'd lived above Ricky in the Las Floritas apartments in Tenerife. She'd worked the same party circuit. Fiona was still around and she would talk, but she didn't want her face shown.
I remember I was in the clothes shop and someone tapped me on the shoulder and I looked round and it was him, and because the last time I'd seen him he had been a little bit odd, I remember sort of jumping and going, oh God, hello, but he was completely normal. I just know, I can even picture it now, but I just know that it was him. I'd heard a story along the lines of someone had seen him walking around with no shoes on in the rain, saying that he was Jesus or something. And I think that his bags or something turned up at Craig's apartment.
Here was someone else who remembered Craig Barron, the Baron, Ricky's best friend. It was Craig that Karen, Ricky's sister, had been desperate to track down when she first flew out to Tenerife, to find out what had happened to her brother.
We couldn't trace Craig for the majority of the time we were there. Obviously he was the closest person to Ricky, so we thought if anyone he'd have an idea of what had happened to Ricky and what his plans were, if he was going to leave the island or whatever.
People have told us as well, the person that knows things is Craig, but he wouldn't open up to us when we were there, and we haven't been able to speak to him since, but he's the person that knows things.
Karen didn't have an address for Craig. All she knew was that he came from Bolton. Then another break. A contact made in Tenerife found a phone number for Craig's mum. We called, and 2 hours later Craig called back. He was working as a sales rep for a car dealership. He said he'd be happy to talk next morning.
Hello there, can I speak to Craig Barron, please? Hello, Craig.
Hi.
How are you?
Alright, how are you?
Very well, very well. Nice to finally meet you.
Gone was the bubble perm and tan. 14 years on, the Baron looks smart and successful.
Yep, and that looks like Ricky. I think we used to be on the same kind of wavelength. We used to have a good laugh together, girls, drinks, all on the same, really.
Because he wrote home saying that, I mean, he almost thought of you like a brother to him.
Oh yeah, we were very close.
You didn't fall out at all while you were out there?
No, we was like best mates all the time, yeah. Actually, when everything actually happened, I'd actually gone away for a week. And I'd come back and that's when it had all sort of happened, everybody was telling me all these stories. I'd heard that he'd had a fight with somebody, I don't know if it was a tourist, the next thing Somebody had told me that he'd put his fist through a hotel window, and they'd actually just seen him walking along the streets with no shoes on and blood and dirty on the face.
And when you got back, has he gone missing at that time, or was he still around?
That's when they told me all these stories, and he had gone missing then.
Right.
So we actually, we had to look round for him, obviously. Asked a few questions. We'd heard that he was seen at some apartments. I can't remember that. I think it was Player Honda Apartments. So me and another chap, again, who was working over there, went down looking. We'd talked to one of the Spanish chaps that worked there on the reception, and he'd said yes, he had seen somebody trying to get in one of the rooms on the 7th floor, I think it was. So we'd gone up there looking, and we found his suitcase.
You actually found it there?
Found his suitcase, and he had a few clothes in it. His passport was in there as well. So we actually picked the suitcase and the passport, took it back to my apartment, and then just weeks went past and just nothing.
What happened to the bag?
We gave that to his sister when she actually came over looking for him. So there was some photos. There might even be the photographs that was in there. I don't know, but there was photographs, a few clothes and the passport. Which, when his sister came over, that's what we did with them. Give them back.
She said you didn't give it to her.
Yeah, there was a passport in the bag.
But you see, because the passport turned up about 6 months later. It was sent back by some tourist organisation that lost documents in Tenerife, and that's how it got sent back.
Really?
And do you think he's still alive?
I'd like to think so, yes.
And there was no indication, as I say, and I'm going over a point, but there was no indication that he'd pissed someone off to the point that they'd want to kill him.
No, I don't think so, no.
You know, because I mean, you hear stories of what Tenerife's like. It has, like any place that has clubs and money around. That there's always going to be a criminal element.
But again, 12 years ago, it was so different over there than it is now. I mean, then it was, I don't know, like I say, it was more friendly atmosphere. Everybody used to enjoy going out on a party and getting pissed. Not going out raving and taking ecstasies and all this sort of thing. You know, it was more what I'd call a natural scene. You know, it was drink, girls, have fun.
But that's not the 1987 other people remember in Tenerife. They recall that was the year that dance music exploded and everything changed.
Acid man, acid man, acid man, acid man, acid man.
The definite change was late 87, summer of 87. People were doing stuff and they had no idea what they were doing. A bit of hash and a bit of a drink, they could deal with that. But suddenly there was this stuff coming in and no one knew. And people were carrying on drinking, like Mick said, on the bars, working the streets. And then as soon as they finished, they'd take something else.
I have a dream. Acid man, acid man, acid man.
That was the scary time. That really was the changeover from I don't feel safe here anymore. I can't trust anyone. I don't believe anything anyone tells me. I want to get out.
Ricky was still working at Sgt. Pepper's. He could hardly have escaped what was happening. Mike Everett was a DJ at Sgt. Pepper's. He still hangs around Playa de las Americas, and he was there back in 87.
It was drugs then?
Yeah, back in 87.
Oh God, yeah. Yeah, most of the people was on the old wacky backy anyway. But it was speed, mainly. You know, when I first came over here, it was just coke. Very little. You'd never heard anything about tablets or anything, or LSD, stuff like that. And then speed, you know.
Mike vividly remembers the parties in the apartments at Las Floritas.
That's the flat they was all stayed. There's about 4 of them, 5 of them. I went round there one morning, 12ish, midday, and it was all kicked out all over the place. And it was all into
there was a jar on the kitchen sink and it was actually full of cocaine. It was an aspirin jar and it was full of coke. It was all on the floor, it was all out of it, you know, next morning.
Ricky's old friend Bo saw his mate begin to lose it, and it all happened very quickly.
He was absolutely spot on, fella, and then all of a sudden there seemed to be some sort of change in him, and he went a little bit strange, and that's all I can say really. I know he got a problem in the apartment where we lived in last 3 years, and he sort of smashed the flat about a little bit, and the police got called, and he got taken away by the police. And then he came back again, and he was rocking, and he was sort of breathing heavily, and he was going, I'm the devil, I'm strong, I'm the devil, I'm strong. And then he was calming down, and then he was getting all tensed up again and saying, I'm the devil, I'm strong, I'm the devil, I'm strong. This was very brief. I mean, from the time that he went a little bit different to the time he disappeared, it was a very short period of time, you know, and nobody really took a great deal of notice. You know what it's like. They're all living in a apartment complex, and it's just, I didn't pull out of it, wouldn't he?
His beach party mate, Fiona, remembers things lurching out of control.
I can remember coming home, and I remember we found him, like, I think either in the bedroom or somewhere, and he was like just wrapped in a sheet, and he went and sat in the wardrobe, and we were like, oh my god, you know, he's a bit weird. You know, it's not like a 2-week holiday, you're doing it night after night after night, and staying up all night and stuff, and you've seen it happen to so many people. When you think about it here, you think, God, like we were all mad.
There is no police record of Ricky's arrest, but he was clearly in a bad way. He was using drugs and mixing with dealers, and among those dealing, it was alleged, were the local police.
The word on the street was they were picking up Spanish dealers, confiscating it, gear, then putting English workers back on the street selling it to the tourists.
Who was doing this?
The police.
What are the police like here?
That's a dodgy one, isn't it? That's what's the place like? Well, I've never had no run-ins with them, so like, what can I say? Well, I don't know. What can I say? They've been all right with me. Been all right with me.
Mei Ling, meanwhile, was still chasing her contacts for news of Ricky. She can't and she won't name names, but she has her own stories of organised crime, corruption and sickening violence, which in Tenerife isn't always that organised.
When we first come here, one of the guys who's got a Chinese restaurant years ago, when he was locking up one night, he was actually grabbed and took into a car, and his throat was cut, you know, from there to there. And he lived though, he's still around, but it's a Chinese restaurant, and it was one of the his ex-waiters that he sacked, taking the night's takings.
Not surprising then that Mei Ling's car was a mobile armoury.
So what weapons do you have in the car?
Do you want to see?
Yeah.
My favourite ones. But like, I'll probably get arrested for this, you know. So, my favourite. My little babies. They're nice. Proper solid as well. They're behind the counter. They actually, you get thinner ones than these. But these ones, you actually went in the storeroom because he knows I was pretty mad on nunchuckers. I've got loads. And he actually got me the really, really hard dense ones. Really nice, them. Really nice. You actually cut them off and you make a kosh. That was a terrible thing on that. The police will arrest me when I come in. I make a kosh. They hate koshes, don't they? This is only like, you know what the rock lamb is using that? But it's good disguise because it's from your knuckle, don't break your fingers. And then I've got me the old trusty butterfly knife.
Some of the violence here is to do with drugs and protection, but a lot of it's just drunkenness. You could see why Mei Ling's martial arts training was simply practical.
Hey, whoa, 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 whoa. Hey, whoa, 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 whoa. Whoa, 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 whoa.
Today, Mei Ling and her boyfriend are off to see Mark, one of her waiters. He got bottled last night in a row over his girlfriend Lindsay.
He was getting kicked by 3 blokes, just lying on the floor, not one person jumped and stopped him.
He was saying if he was there, would he got a bloody chopper? You know what I mean? It's like 3 guys onto one. That's sickening, that.
And I was like, do you want an ambulance? And I was like, well, do I need one? And they was like, yeah, I think you do. And I was like, well, I'm not going to have one if I've got to pay for one. And they was like, oh, we'll sort that out, don't we?
Good.
Mark doesn't want to hang around. He's fearful of another beating.
You know what I mean? You can live at my house. No one knows where I live. You know what I mean?
It's just I don't want to go down there and see people that maybe like the other night were there just trying to get a kick in me. I'm sick of the people that sort of like you thought were good friends, and then like when you're lying on the floor in a pool of blood, you're looking up and they're the ones sort of like, you know, sort of like, yeah, sticking a boot into you. People you never even expect doing it. It just makes me sick, it really does.
He's off on the next flight home, and like Ricky, he's leaving all his possessions behind. Ricky too had wanted desperately to get home. He told his sister he was after a flight, but he was short of cash. It was just a couple of weeks before Christmas, but no one could precisely remember where Ricky was last seen. Craig Barron said that he'd found his bag on a balcony at the Playa Honda Holiday Apartments. Mei Ling took us to have a look. No one remembered anything about Ricky. Looking for Ricky had gone on for months, but all we were left with was this empty balcony in an apartment block. Up until now, the police had simply refused to talk. They weren't interested, and after all, there was no evidence of any crime. But then permission arrived from the mainland. They would talk about Ricky, and they said there were 5 unidentified bodies that had turned up in Tenerife over the past 14 years. Was one of them Ricky?
The main market index fell sharply until the Japanese finance ministry ordered brokers to stop panic selling.
In October '87, the boom suddenly went bust. As the financial bubble burst, Ricky Dakota's world was falling apart.
He did actually speak to Mum the last time he rang, and she said it lasted all of about 30 seconds.
He said, how are you? I've received the money. I haven't got long to speak. I should be back in a week or 2.
He sounded strange, like he was worried, anxious or something.
And then the phone just went dead then.
Talking to the British consul, it was pretty clear that Ricky's disappearance wasn't that unusual. Tales of misadventure were commonplace.
There is quite a bit of violence that's grown through organised crime, but I suppose probably the main violence here is simply caused by the fact that people can drink whatever they like, whenever they like. In fact, 2 years ago I had 2 youngsters come here on holiday. They were just buying litre bottles of spirits and drinking straight from the bottle. They arrived at 4:30 one afternoon, and by 6:30 they had got to a stage where one of them was in the intensive care unit and the other one was on the mortuary stand. He could have disappeared in the countryside here, or he could have committed suicide, anything like that could have happened, and in which case there are bodies which are sometimes not found for several years. But on the other hand, he could have run foul of somebody, of course, in which case they could have disposed of him.
Does that go on very often here?
I think no doubt there is quite a bit of organised British crime down there, but it's very, very difficult to prove anything or get anything out. It isn't, people are frightened to talk.
There were hundreds of rumours about bodies buried in the hills, and you could see why they'd never be found. Guardia Civil headquarters in Santa Cruz, Tenerife's capital. It's here that the details are kept of the 5 unidentified bodies that have turned up on the island in the 14 years since Ricky vanished.
La desaparición es un hecho muy normal, es decir, todos los días tenemos datos de desaparecidos. Son todos masculinos. Habría que referir caso por caso, pero decirle, bueno, pues que había cadáveres que ya llevaban 40 días en el agua, en otros casos eran más recientes, incluso hemos encontrado algún esqueleto de esos 5, ya le digo, normalmente eso es lo que se ha encontrado, ¿no? Cómo estaban.
The bodies are buried in unmarked graves in one of the 2 big cemeteries in the south of the island. This one is up in the hills. It's a peaceful place.
Y comparando con los 5 cadáveres que hay ahí, es una prueba fiable absolutamente al 100%. Tendría que ser un familiar directo, por supuesto.
They can actually, well, exhume the bodies and see which one is which.
It could be that one of these bodies is that of Ricky Dakota. Spain has just started a unique project to help the families of people who've gone missing. It's called Operation Phoenix, and it's based on DNA testing. For Ricky's family, this is traumatic. They didn't know about the bodies. They've spent 14 years hoping to find him alive. This simple swab could prove that he's dead. Here in the mainland city of Granada, the samples arrive, ready to be tested against the DNA from the bones from the 5 unmarked graves on Tenerife. This is the first project in the world to create a database on unidentified bodies to help families with missing relatives. The Dakota family samples are being supervised by Professor Jose Lorente.
Why did this start in Spain? Because this is quite unusual.
It's the first database in the world devoted only to missing persons. We had a number of bones that couldn't be identified, and on the other side we had a number of families looking for missing persons, and of course some of them they had to match.
It's going to be weeks before the family will know whether or not there's a match with any of the unknown corpses.
In Spain, we estimate that in the last 30 years, there are accumulation of probably between 1,500 and 2,000 unidentified bodies.
Back in Tenerife, very discreetly, people are beginning to come forward. They say they know what happened to Ricky. Mei Ling says she's been approached by someone who has to remain anonymous. It's difficult to break news that will inevitably distress Ricky's family.
What have people told you about Ricky?
Well, I got a message through. What's the message? Don't bother, I wouldn't be bothered looking for him, because you won't find him, because he got into a bit of trouble back then, and he was up the mountains and topped, throat cut. As I said, I mean, I don't want to say that horrible lots of words, so...
Do you believe it?
To be truthful and honestly, yeah.
Mei Ling's informant won't come into the open, but one night, not long after, someone else comes forward and agrees to talk. He won't be recorded even in disguise, and he's obviously not inventing his fear. He says there's no point in looking for Ricky. What happened was brutally simple. He fatally crossed one of the island's biggest drug dealers.
This guy you're looking for, this man's gone. There's no two ways about it. Ricky's dead. 2 guys, one being Ricky, with hoods over their faces, tried to burgle. Can't remember exactly if it was £35,000 or the same amount in coke. Anyway, they tried to break into his apartment and they got caught. Had a couple of guys take him. Now you've got to stop asking questions. He's gone.
Could Ricky's family any longer cling on to the faint hope of Fiona's sighting in South London?
I just know, I can even picture it now, but I just know that it was him.
Fiona must have been mistaken. every other piece of evidence was pointing in a different direction.
It was a fantasy world. It wasn't real. It was just an imaginary world.
You're on holiday 24 hours a day. The bars are open 24 hours a day. And it does lead to other things. A lot of them are impressionable. They've never been away from home before. They get easily led by manipulative people.
He was absolutely spot on, fella, and then all of a sudden there seemed to be some sort of change in him. He went a little bit strange, and that's all I can say, really.
Summer of '87. That was a scary time. That really was the changeover from I don't feel safe here anymore. I can't trust anyone. I don't believe anything anyone tells me. I want to get out.
People were doing stuff and they had no idea what they were doing.
There was a jar on the kitchen sink and it was absolutely full of cocaine.
There is no people you can upset. People do disappear.
Could have run foul of somebody, in which case they could have disposed of them.
It's a funny place.
Do you understand why people won't say things to me in front of the camera?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it all depends on what questions you're asking them anyway, don't it?
People have told us as well, the person that knows things is Craig, but he wouldn't open up to us when we were there, but he's the person that knows things.
If there are people in Tenerife after all these years who know that Ricky was murdered, it seems incredible that Ricky's best friend Craig Barron had no inkling. It was worth making one more visit up north to see him.
Hello?
Hello, Craig?
Yes.
Hi. Do you think it'd be possible to meet for lunch today?
Yeah, how long is it going to be?
About half an hour.
Right.
He agrees to meet at this sports centre, but then he cancels at the last minute. Craig was obviously as worried as the other two informants, which wasn't difficult to understand.
Hello, Craig. It's Simon Egan.
Hello.
Hello, mate. Craig, you've made it clear that you don't want to meet with me again, so I was just wondering if I could ask you a couple of questions over the phone for the record.
Right, hold on. I'll just transfer you over to my phone.
Okay, thanks.
Hello.
Hi.
Hiya.
Yeah. We do know that he upset someone really big on the island.
Right.
And that this someone is the person that probably had him killed.
Yeah.
Is that why you won't talk?
Yes.
Are you worried?
I don't want to get involved anymore on that side.
Yeah. You're scared for yourself?
Well, you don't know how long anybody's reach is, do you?
Right, right.
Last week, Ricky's family heard that the DNA tests on the 5 unknown bodies were inconclusive. They're now waiting for the results of further testing. If you're searching for someone either abroad or in the UK, there's a Channel 4 recorded information line on 0870 400 2244 with details of organisations that may be able to help. Lines are open around the clock on 0870 400 2244.